Hello, everyone. In my video exploration of Spinoza, I shared how I took my time before tackling a colossal figure in philosophy such as Spinoza. Meticulous preparation is essential, as approaching a philosophical giant without it is a daunting task. Today, I reveal a video on Hegel where this caution, already crucial for Spinoza, becomes absolutely indispensable. Creating a video on a thinker of Hegel's stature is a real challenge, as it implies that one can never fully encompass his complex philosophy in a limited time. In the case of Hegel, his philosophy aspires to a total understanding, which makes the task even more difficult. Rather than adopting indirect approaches or overly abstract jargon, I opted for a methodological approach that aims to introduce you to the very heart of his thought. In my opinion, the key concept of Hegelian philosophy is dialectics. By calling dialectics a concept, I may be oversimplifying or even erring. However, as you will discover with Hegel, error is intrinsic to the process of knowledge. Dialectics is not merely a concept in the traditional sense, which refers to a general idea or abstraction, like freedom, happiness, or rights. It is rather a dynamic process, a mode of operation that reveals how reality manifests itself. It may seem surprising to talk about the behavior of reality as if it had intentions or a personality. Hegel does not personify reality, but he recognizes a rational principle in it, of which dialectics is the expression in the material world. Before diving deeper into this notion, allow me to take a historical detour to evoke dialectics in ancient Greece, specifically with Socrates. There, dialectics is seen as a mode of reasoning based on refutation. It is a method that subjects the interlocutor to a series of contradictions, allowing, through a rigorous process of refutation, to reach a solid truth that has withstood the test of contradiction. This method endures, influencing the modern scientific approach that involves testing hypotheses and eliminating those that prove to be false or invalid. We retain, therefore, that dialectics is a method that reaches truth by successively eliminating falsehood. Simply put, it resembles the logic of elimination, similar to that used in certain quiz shows where, faced with multiple answer options, one discards the false ones to identify the correct one. Dialectics, in the Socratic tradition, is thus a method of discussion that leads to truth by refuting falsehood. However, in this video, we delve into dialectics according to Hegel, which far exceeds this simple method of reasoning or investigation of the truth. For Hegel, dialectics encompasses a much broader reality, enveloping the entire material and spiritual universe, including thought and ideas, the spirit. In essence, Hegelian dialectics illustrates the process by which all existence inevitably passes through its opposite. A key element to understanding Hegelian dialectics is the idea that everything that exists is constantly in motion, passing through its opposite. Although this may seem abstract, let's examine a concrete example. Consider the case of a student who enters business school after obtaining his baccalaureate, driven by the conviction that he can now pursue what he desires. However, during the first semester, the student realizes that he finds no satisfaction in this path, feeling disconnected and uninterested, despite his perseverance to finish the year under the pressure of responsibility. Despite his parents' pride in his academic success, the student feels an inner frustration, finding no pleasure or satisfaction in his studies, and begins to doubt his choices. During the summer, he is torn between the desire to stop his studies to pursue a passion and the pressure to continue so as not to disappoint his parents or compromise his future. Eventually, he decides to continue his studies for a second year, but with increased awareness that this path does not suit him, intensifying his feeling of discomfort and internal disagreement. Still guided by his sense of responsibility, our student completes and validates his second year. His parents are extremely proud of him, and he is celebrated by everyone for his success. However, he feels dissatisfied, feeling like he is wasting his time. It is then that he makes a radical decision. He quits his business studies to dedicate himself to his true passion, music. This decision shocks his parents, who do not understand and strongly oppose it, but the student remains determined not to continue in the path of commerce. This story illustrates that the student had to go through 2 years of constraint and displeasure to realize that his true calling was elsewhere. It took him 2 years to decide to change course and follow his passion. This experience embodies the dialectical nature of his journey. He had to experience what was not suitable for him to discover what truly suited him. Although some might argue that he knew from the start that business was not his path, the reality of this knowledge had to fully emerge in his consciousness. It had to manifest so clearly that it could no longer be ignored, inevitably leading to an irrevocable decision. Dialectics, in this context, is the process of experiencing contradiction to reveal an undeniable truth. Let's take a second example with the teenager. Adolescence is a period of transition marked by the mutation from childhood to adulthood. Often, teenagers express a desire not to be perceived as children anymore, aspiring to be recognized as full-fledged individuals with their own identity, tastes, and autonomy. It's no coincidence that teenagers are particularly sensitive to fashion, as it allows them to forge a distinct identity. The teenager often defines themselves in opposition to traditional norms, including parental authority, which can manifest very concretely, like dyeing their hair green or adopting a unique style of dress in a quest to assert their individuality and stand out. Parents facing the adolescent crisis, a term evoking mutation, typically have two possible reactions. The first is to try to control this crisis by demanding that the teenager change their appearance, such as bleaching their hair or adopting a more classic dress style, in an effort to minimize their individual expression. The second reaction is to recognize that adolescence is characterized by opposition, serving as a mechanism for self-assertion and identity building. It is essential to understand that typical adolescent behavior should not be viewed as a problem to be solved. Instead, it is a necessary passage for their development into accomplished adults. Adolescence is a crucial phase of life that should not be hindered, as it is fundamental for the individual to mature and become fully themselves. This process of experiencing contradiction is vital for the adolescent to confront and eventually harmonize with the world around them. This transition is crucial, and often the relationship with parents improves once the individual becomes an adult, having surpassed the need for opposition characteristic of adolescence. Trying to prevent this natural and inevitable step can create more problems than it solves. This principle of dialectics applies to various aspects of life, including romantic relationships. In a romantic relationship, for example, the initial infatuation may gradually give way to irritation due to the other's flaws, leading to conflicts. Sometimes, these conflicts can result in a breakup, where one tries to erase the other's presence from our life, such as by blocking their contact on social media. However, this symbolic attempt at elimination is futile, as the other continues to exist, not only physically, but also in the memories and influence they have had on our personality. Thus, every relationship leaves an indelible mark, shaping who we are and how we interact with the world. Attempts to exclude someone from our life often illustrate the futility of the effort, as that person remains a part of our history. This brings us to the third stage of the dialectical process, reconciliation. Accepting that someone we sought to forget still played a significant role in our development is crucial. Denying this influence would be like disowning a part of ourselves, an unsustainable, self-destructive endeavor in the long term. Reconciliation, or forgiveness, allows transcending the contradiction, recognizing that the events that occurred were inevitable and that the conflict, though necessary, does not define the entirety of the experience. Reconciling, even symbolically, with someone we have been in conflict with marks the passage through the third phase of what ethical dialectics call reconciliation, a unifying process. Hegel uses the German term Aufhebung to describe this process, meaning simultaneously to cancel, to preserve, and to transcend, encapsulating the essence of dialectics. The cancellation occurs in the desire to end the conflict, but at the same time, we preserve the lessons and impacts of that relationship, unable to completely erase our shared history. Transcendence is achieved when we overcome the contradiction, moving it from a central element to just a phase of our relational journey. Thus, dialectics is a three-movement process often summarized by the sequence thesis, antithesis, synthesis, illustrating a perpetual dynamic where contradiction plays a crucial and driving role in all evolution. Highlighting this dynamic is essential to fully understand the dialectical nature of our development and interactions. So far, I have approached Hegel's dialectic as a dynamic process that permeates reality. What is crucial to understand is that dialectics also applies to our inner life, influencing our thoughts, consciousness, and spirit. Our ideas themselves are subject to this dialectical dynamic, evolving through contradiction. To illustrate this, let's take the example of a car journey to a party with friends. You are driving and have a passenger who suggests an alternative, supposedly faster route. You can either stick to your usual path or experiment with the otherness suggestion and test the new route. If you choose not to follow the new route, you remain in an intellectual comfort zone without questioning your choice. Thus, you cannot ascertain with certainty if your usual route is the best, as it has not been compared to the alternative. However, if you accept your passenger suggestion and take the new route, you engage in a dialectical experience. Even if this choice turns out to be less efficient, the time lost appears wasted, but it is not. Instead, those few minutes are an investment in testing a hypothesis, an experience of contradiction that enriches and solidifies your understanding. In the end, the knowledge you accumulate after this trial is an improved and expanded version of your initial understanding. Your initial understanding, once enriched by new experiences, becomes more refined and complete knowledge. This is the fundamental principle of dialectics. Even an experience that seems superficially redundant or unnecessary can, in reality, refine and alter our pre-existing knowledge. Recognizing that the confirmation or expansion of our knowledge transforms its nature underscores why it is counterproductive to protect our beliefs from the trials of refutation. Dialectics is inherently linked to evolution. Nothing in existence remains static. Everything is in perpetual becoming. It is by grasping that evolution is not just an aspect of existence, but the fundamental engine of all reality, that we truly understand the dialectical nature of our world. Take the example of teaching mathematics to a child. We start with positive whole numbers, presenting them simply as the numbers. Technically, this could be seen as an oversimplification or even inaccuracy because we omit negative numbers and other numerical categories. This approach is adopted because it is pedagogically illogical to introduce complex mathematical concepts to a young child. Learning must naturally follow a progression, starting with the most accessible concepts before expanding to more sophisticated notions. Learning begins with familiarization with natural whole numbers, progressing towards the discovery of other numerical sets. This transition illustrates that the initial understanding, perceived as complete, is actually only partial. The error or partiality of the initial knowledge is not a fault in the Hegelian perspective. It is seen as a necessary step, knowledge in development. Recognizing and accepting the error is fundamental for the advancement of knowledge. According to dialectics, access to truth is not immediate. It results from a progressive journey through the contradictions of our presuppositions. For Hegel, error is essential because it constitutes a step toward complete understanding. Thus, making mistakes is perceived not as a failure, but as a crucial component of the journey towards truth. This reflection leads to questioning whether the path of error is necessary. Could we directly reach the correct answer without going through mistakes? Do we need to deny certain facts only to rediscover and understand them later? This question underscores that passively receiving the truth, without testing it through our own experience, limits our verification and autonomous learning capacity. Hegel argues that knowledge should emerge from personal experience, not be imposed by an external authority. Knowledge is the fruit of individual experience, involving interactions, readings, reflections, and meditations, all forming the basis of our personal learning. These individual experiences contribute significantly to our knowledge process, enriching our understanding as we evolve in our relationships and discover new aspects of our environment and ourselves. In discovering the faults of a person, termed here as flaws, based on your perception, you may experience disappointment. This disappointment arises when the image you have formed of the person does not match reality. This experience, though disappointing, is so from your perspective, as you were the one who perhaps placed unrealistic expectations on this person. The experience of disappointment then becomes a lesson, fostering your personal growth and broadening your understanding. By acknowledging this disappointment, you realize that the individual has the right to be who they are without having to meet your personal expectations. Thus, a seemingly negative experience is not entirely negative, as it brings awareness and understanding that people exist independently of our desires, a crucial notion for Hegel. Every negative experience contains a positive aspect, revealing valuable lessons. These lessons become positive not during the experience itself, but after we have understood and recognized its necessity. According to Hegel, understanding is built progressively through a series of often painful steps, as they challenge our pre-existing beliefs or desires. This is the essence of dialectics. It teaches that negative experiences invariably have a positive side, and it is our responsibility to recognize this positive potential. The realization comes less from a deliberate choice than from a process that manifests within us. Dialectics, governed by this principle, applies to all aspects of existence, both material and immaterial, demonstrating its universal scope in our understanding of the world. Our thoughts and knowledge develop by denying and refuting what we previously considered true. Belief often appears as certain knowledge because no one considers their own beliefs irrational or absurd. Each individual has their reasons for believing what they believe. Therefore, knowledge is subjective, shaped by the individual's personal experience. It is questioned and evolves through a series of contradictory experiences, leading to a reevaluation of previous convictions. This awareness can reveal that previous knowledge, though not entirely false, was incomplete. Accepting that one might have been mistaken, or that one has not considered everything, requires great humility. Dialectics as a process encompasses both the material and immaterial aspects of existence. It illustrates how everything that exists unfolds through contradictory stages, which ultimately form a coherent whole. Understanding this dialectical principle makes us more tolerant of errors, recognizing that they are intrinsic to the quest for truth. Those who reject the dialectical process refuse to acknowledge its omnipresence in reality. Not evolving means not learning. Refusing evolution is to deny the dynamism inherent in all existence. Consciousness plays a key role in this process, allowing us not only to recognize the existence of the world, but also to understand its evolution. Being conscious in the Hegelian sense involves paying attention to the contradictory and paradoxical dynamics that lead to understanding. Understanding the evolution of the world helps us grasp how our own consciousness evolves. Understanding the development of our thoughts and the evolution of our opinions means recognizing that each mistake brings us closer to a deeper understanding, a step further towards Hegel's conceptual reality, the realm of the spirit. Consciousness experiences the world, and in doing so, it examines itself, observing its reactions to diverging ideas and its ability to incorporate contradiction as a vector of progress. Consciousness experiences humility by opening up to new information, but also resistance, sometimes refusing evolution to maintain identity comfort. Our self-esteem is often tied to our convictions and values, making it difficult to welcome the refutation of our beliefs without fervent defense, illustrating an ego struggle for survival. The ego, in seeking to preserve itself, may jeopardize the quest for truth, as it clings to its established perspectives. Hegel teaches us that for every contradiction encountered, consciousness must die symbolically to be reborn enriched, illustrating the dynamic of evolution as the essence of existence. Evolving does not mean denying one's past, but opening up to new potentials, refining our essence. For Hegel, there is no failure in error. Each mistake is a fragment of truth to be integrated for a more complete understanding. By accepting our errors as partial, we move closer to the absolute truth. In the human context, we never possess the whole truth, but navigate through a landscape of partial truths. Acknowledging our lack guides us toward a more comprehensive understanding. Hegel's phenomenology of spirit, with its focus on the science of conscious experience, illustrates dialectics as a means to grasp this constant evolution of consciousness. This experience of consciousness has us navigating from one contradiction to another, reflecting the diversity and plurality of the world. Everything external to us may seem contradictory or opposed to our essence. It is nearly impossible to find someone who shares our thoughts, beliefs, and desires entirely, as each individual is unique, underscoring the richness of otherness in our environment. Contradiction in the Hegelian context is not negative, but an integral part of the evolutionary process, even if it can be subjectively perceived as negative before being recognized as beneficial in the context of overall development. Each new experience is an opportunity to encounter contradiction and therefore to potentially evolve. Encountering otherness without feeling opposition does not indicate a failure of Hegelian dialectics, but may suggest that we have already integrated this difference into our understanding of the world. Thus, what seemed to be otherness is no longer such. We have assimilated it and no longer perceive it as opposition. Daily interactions between different perceptions or consciousnesses are not necessarily conflictual, but can serve to recognize and integrate the various aspects of reality, enriching our field of consciousness. According to Hegel, dialectics is a path toward the expansion of our consciousness, requiring engagement in oppositions to enrich our understanding. The example of the car journey illustrates the need for direct experience to evaluate alternatives and make informed choices. Similarly, confrontation, particularly for adolescents, can be essential in forging their identity, highlighting that the spirit of contradiction is often a natural and necessary element of their development. Adolescence is a phase everyone must go through, and by fully living through this period, we can overcome it and later look back and smile at our old photos, perhaps recognizing the naivety of that time without necessarily feeling shame. With kindness, we can admit that this stage was essential and natural in our development. At 25, one might look back with condescension, thinking they have reached a deeper understanding, mocking their former ways as simplistic or conformist. However, the reality is that 10 years later, the same person will realize their former naivety, pretension, or arrogance, thus continuing their personal evolution through the recognition of the different phases of their life. Hegel points out that evolution occurs by believing at each moment to hold the truth, which allows confronting and effectively integrating contradictions. Living through the various phases of our life means exposing ourselves to risk and contradiction, perceiving these challenges as opportunities for growth. As Nietzsche suggested, the trials that do not destroy us strengthen us and contribute to our elevation. Dialectics teaches us that experience, with its contradictions, is irreplaceable, and through it, we gain a more comprehensive understanding. By actively living and being aware of our journey, we can realize our potential and fully achieve our purpose, becoming what we are meant to be.